This is the Mavic 2 Air, and it might be the best travel drone ever. But the first thing I want to test is how it can handle high wind. So I'm down here on an extremely windy day. These seem like maybe 35-mile-an-hour winds. This made the Mavic Mini fail. Will this be able to handle it? Let's find out. Launching from sand could ruin the drone, so I chose to hand launch. It handled it well, but I still wish it had a dedicated button or allowed me just to toss it in the air. I was able to smoothly track around this moving boat, even in gusty winds. However, when flying with the camera angled up, it still forces the camera down to avoid getting the props in the shot. Every DJI drone does this except for the high-end Inspire. It had no problem flying upwind in these high winds, and in fact, it's handling fantastically. The range of the Mavic Air 2 is better than any drone we've ever tested. I estimate you could reach 2 to 3 miles of range. In dense neighborhoods with Wi-Fi interference and obstacles, it performed slightly better than our Mavic 2. I got a strong wind warning, which is good news, and it gave me useful advice. It said, lower your altitude and return to home. Hand landing worked well. I simply held my palm under it and pushed the left stick down, being careful to keep my fingers away from the props. We took the drone for a drive. Piloting it from a moving car was doable, but not any easier than other drones. I almost hit a sign while flying sideways because, like every DJI drone, it lacks side obstacle avoidance. We stopped at this barn to test the stills camera. The Mavic Air 2 gives you the option to shoot either 12 or 48 megapixel stills. You should only ever shoot 48 megapixel stills. The 12 megapixel stills lack detail and show these really strange colored artifacts. They're so bad that DJI really needs to immediately fix it and issue a firmware update. In the meantime, the 48 megapixel stills looked great. Photographers are always out at sunrise and sunset, and that's when the contrast is the highest. You got that bright sun and then deep shadows, and that's what challenges dynamic range in a camera. Small sensors like the one in this Mavic Air 2 really struggle with that. Let's go take a classic picture of a lighthouse and see how it turns out. Orbiting around this boat, the drone exposed the footage nicely, retaining sufficient shadow detail. When I finally reached the lighthouse, the auto exposure did a good job of balancing the complex lighting. From my experience shooting the barn, I know that the 12 megapixel photos aren't worth taking, but the DJI disables bracketing on 48 megapixel stills, and I really needed that extra dynamic range. There's also no continuous shooting, so taking multiple images and stacking them to reduce that noise is really difficult. You have to manually push it over and over again, but each photo takes so long that the drone tends to drift between shots, meaning that you can't automatically align them. I hate that DJI removed basic photographic tools from an otherwise powerful stills camera. This was a great test because I did what every photographer does at some point, which is I forgot my SD card in it because I left it in my reader, but it has internal memory and actually filled it up really quick with that 4K 60 footage, but still, it was better than nothing, and that internal memory saved the day. Wrong, Tony! You didn't forget the SD card, it popped out of place on its own. If the drone tells you it doesn't have an SD card, we'll check for that. If you do have to rely on internal storage, know that it can only store about 9 minutes of 4K 60 footage. The Mavic Air 2 does 4K 60, while the Mavic 2 drones only do 4K at 30 frames per second. That means I can slow the footage down 50% and still have it look good. That makes it very peaceful and kind of ethereal. It also allows me to smooth out the jerkiness in any video and stretch my B-roll twice as far. 4K 60 is a big deal. As the sun set, the video and stills quality fell apart. It just wasn't as dark as it seems in the video. I could see fine. It might still be okay for dusk real estate shots, but you'll get better results from the bigger lens and sensor on the Mavic 2 Pro. Now let's test the tracking features. I use this when I'm filming by myself, if I want to film myself moving from one place to another for transitions and such. I find that it tends to be overly aggressive with the obstacle avoidance and will just abruptly stop when I could just go around something, or it will not see a tree branch at all and crash right into it, or it will lose track of me if I move behind something and re-emerge on the other side. Let's see how it actually does. It started raining right after I recorded that, so let's see if the drone can survive a soaking. The Mavic Air 2 has active track 3, the latest version of DJI's tracking software, and yeah, it actually worked way better than anything else. It successfully navigated around obstacles, even under obstacles. Earlier drones would have just stopped or maybe flown right into a tree branch. It's not perfect. It did hit one small tree branch, which it trimmed with its props and then just continued flying. It also refused to go through a gate that was plenty big enough. Even if I elevated it above the gate, it refused to go because the obstacle detection is not precise enough. So Active Track 3 is a big step forward, but it still has a fatal flaw. The video is far from cinematic. It is extremely jerky. The little camera twitches around like a bird's head instead of giving me nice, big, smooth, flowing motions that anticipate my movement. As a result, I'll still film manually whenever I can, but for those times when I'm filming alone, I will use Active Track 3. I just have to really overfilm everything so I can find a few 3 to 5 second clips that are nice and smooth. Oh, to compound that problem, it will not track at 60 frames per second, so I had to drop down to 30 frames per second, which means I can't slow down or stretch the footage to get more out of it. By the way, the Mavic Air 2 handled the light rain just fine, just as all my previous drones have. Let me start the summary by saying I might use a drone different than you. Drones provide me with tracking shots, with aerial shots. That's perfect for telling the story of how we get from point A to point B. It's perfect for establishing shots, like here I am in the world. So this review is going to be most meaningful to you if you also want to be a creator and a storyteller. For me, the Mavic Air 2 is the best drone I've ever used for the way that I use it. That is frequently traveling with it. That is frequently hiking with it in a backpack. That is wanting to be in public places but disturb people as little as possible. Up until now, I've been using this Mavic 2 Zoom and the Phantom 4 Pro. The Mavic 2 Zoom was my travel drone, but it didn't have 4K 60, which is my preferred video format for the ability to crop in and slow it down. The Phantom 4 Pro I would use anytime I needed 4K 60, but I wasn't traveling because obviously it's too bulky to travel with. This provides the compact nature of the Mavic series with 4K 60. Let's take a moment and go over the Mavic lineup to talk about which of these drones you should get. At $500, the Mavic Mini we found to be unsatisfactory. In our review, we decided not to recommend it to anyone. You should watch the entire review. But the fundamental problem with the Mavic Mini is that at some point, you're going to catch unexpected wind, and it is not powerful enough to fight those winds. I am not the only YouTube reviewer who encountered this problem. It seems to be predominant. If you can only spend $500 on a drone, I would instead recommend a used Parrot and Naffy. They have refurbished Parrot and Naffys, which are like new, and I could pick them up on Amazon for $415. This Mavic Air 2 at $800 is a sweet spot. I would recommend this to anybody, even over the more expensive drones. It has better range, better video capabilities, and while this can zoom, I never find myself actually using the zoom. The reason for that is for the tracking shots that I like to use, the effect is more pronounced at the wider angle. Thus, maybe you need the zoom for things like controlling the background in real estate photography, but for me, the higher resolution 48 megapixel photos and 4K 60 video also provide croppability that helps to replace some of that zoom that you get. So to me, the price tag on the Mavic 2 Zoom at $1,350 is unjustified, especially for a bigger format with slightly worse results. You can also get the Mavic 2 Pro, which has a bigger camera on it in the same form factor as this Mavic 2 Zoom. That will provide you with better low light results. That might be worth it for some of you. And in fact, I'm considering adding it for those dust shots that I need so I can just get better pictures in low light as the sun is setting or rising. I hope this video has helped you make a decision. I know I was not the first reviewer to get this out. We no longer have a relationship with DJI where they will loan us gear early. I think this happened because we tend to give brutally honest reviews, and providing a brutally honest critique saying which features absolutely don't work is a great way to get cut off the early release list from a manufacturer. And for that reason, it might be really smart for you to not pre-order stuff, to actually wait a couple of weeks after a product ships so that reviewers, independent reviewers like myself, can take a look at it and give you an unbiased review.
It's so clever, it activates by recognizing you. Just launch it from the palm of your hand.
That's not good.
So thanks for supporting independent, objective reviewers like ourselves by watching this video. I would also ask that you subscribe to see future videos, including other drone reviews and tutorials, and to give us a like. And if you really want to get the best results out of your drone, you should spend a little bit of time learning about it. The most recent edition of my #1 book, Stunning Digital Photography, incorporates drones. This is the version that has 20 hours on the cover. The earlier editions did not cover drones, but I continually update this and give out free updates to everybody who buys it to stay on top of recent photography trends. And in both still photography and video, drones have proven to be a vital tool for every photographer, wedding photographers, real estate photographers. Pretty much everybody has to have a drone now. And if it's one drone, for me, it's going to be the Mavic Air 2. I would love to hear your questions about the Mavic Air 2. What did I miss? What are your experiences? And what else do you want to know about it before you drop $800? Oh, by the way, there's a Fly More kit, but I didn't get it and I wouldn't recommend you get it. One battery has always been plenty for me. It seems to really last most of half an hour, and I've been able to take multiple flights. I can't imagine a scenario, even traveling, even making these YouTube videos, where I would need more than one battery in a given day. I hope that saved you a few bucks, because that's always my goal, to save the consumers some money, not to support the big multinational corporations. Thanks and bye.